Welcome back to Water Down Wednesday here on a kind of a cold, drizzly Wednesday night, evening. I don't know. We're joined alongside now Jonna Jersman, and I will screw the name up. I apologize if I do, but she is a columnist for the Daily Nebraskan. Her column, is it once every 2 weeks now, or when exactly does it show? Because I know it used to be once a week last year, and it looks like it's changed to once every other week, but...
Yeah, it's actually once every other week this semester.
Okay, and it's called Sex Scrolls. It's pretty popular on campus, both good popularity and bad popularity, but I guess there's no such thing as bad publicity, so
it's true.
Got that going. First off, how long have you been writing columns, mainly dedicated to what you talk about in the Sex Scrolls, more R-rated
explicit
topics? Yeah.
I actually just started doing this last January. We had a new features editor come in, and he was looking for a lot more column ideas. And so over Christmas break, I got to thinking, okay, basically I just watched a whole bunch of Sex and the City, and it gave me the idea. I was like, hey, I think I could write a pretty decent sex column. And so I pitched him the idea, and he said, yeah, we'll see where it goes. And last semester was the premiere of it, I guess. And so this is my sophomore semester doing it.
And what kind of feedback did you get right away when you started writing it? And I'm sure it's both good and bad feedback, but what's kind of initial feedback you got?
The initial feedback was pretty moderate, just because my first couple columns weren't very racy. And so it was actually, I didn't really get that much feedback at first. It wasn't until a couple columns in, a couple weeks in, that I started getting actual feedback where people were telling me what they thought about it. And it was very mixed. Some people thought it was great, it was funny, they understood my sense of humor, and other people just did not agree with my perspective, which I totally understand.
Yeah, definitely. When did you realize that your writing might cause backlash? When you initially came up with this idea, did you know right away that you're going to get negative feedback, or did you kind of hope that maybe your college viewers or readers were gonna be more mature and kind of just take it a grain of salt?
I think as soon as I had the idea, I was like, I don't even know if they're gonna let me do this. This is Nebraska. We're pretty conservative out here in the Midwest, And so I was actually kind of nervous when I pitched the idea. I was like, it's okay if you think it's dumb, if it's too racy, that's fine. So I knew I was gonna get some kind of interesting backlash maybe, but I was hoping that some people would enjoy it, and I think they do.
Have you gotten thicker skin as you've gone on and written more columns and heard more?
Definitely grown quite accustomed to people hating on my column, and that I was kind of knew that was going to happen, and I've grown more accustomed to it as it has continued, and I understand people's positions in not understanding, I guess, what I mean, or agreeing with me, and I don't expect everyone to agree with me at all.
Have you received any censorship from the DN, where you maybe put an article out there and they were just maybe that's a little too far? Or have they been pretty, free to just whatever you want to write, they just kind of let you go?
Pretty much I've had a lot of freedom with it. I have had some things okay, let's tone that down, or let's take this word out, or let's reword it. I thought at one point last semester they were going to make me kind of change the angle I was using. I thought they were going to change it to more of a I don't know, talk more about how to have safe sex and what's important and all the STDs out there, and I know those are important things, but that wasn't the angle I wanted to take, and it was more of a clinical kind of doctor standpoint, which I don't have that expertise. And so I was glad that they didn't make me do that. We're
joined in studio by Jonna Jersman, the Sex Scrolls columnist. What kind of helps you come up with some of the ideas for your stories? I mean, if anybody has read, they're pretty broad. Is it just stuff you see in life? Maybe people who email in with ideas, or is it mainly just kind of what you go through on a daily basis, that kind of thing?
It pretty much comes from my life. I do have a lot of conversations with friends, and we'll talk about different topics, and it'll get me ideas. But for the most part, not every column, but a lot of them have come from something that has happened to me or something that I thought was interesting. I haven't really gotten any suggestions from readers, but I would love them if anyone had any suggestions.
Why do you think some of why do you think some of these things need to be said?
Well, I think that is one of the biggest problems in not just Nebraska, but in like the country as a whole and our entire society. We're so scared to talk about sex that it becomes this taboo, scary, dirty thing that no one wants to talk about. And so by not talking about it, we're not educated about it and we're not comfortable with it. And so then, especially women, I feel like, are very uncomfortable with talking about sex and talking about or knowing even their own bodies. And so I feel like it is something that women especially, but everyone in the country needs to be more comfortable with, I think.
How do you think you got to be this comfortable with, not only with yourself, but being able to talk about it to a whole campus and readership?
I have no idea why I'm comfortable with it. I don't know. I've always just been kind of one of those people that I'm not easily embarrassed by anything. It takes a lot to get me to blush, and so I don't know. I guess I see that it is something that needs to be addressed, and because no one else really wants to step up to the plate and talk about it, I might as well take a swing.
Does your parents know?
Yeah.
And how do they feel about it?
Oh, my mom has been behind me the entire time. She reads it every week, and usually she completely agrees with what I say. Sometimes she'll call me and be like, "Yeah, my coworkers and I were reading your column this week," and it's really funny. My dad knows about it. I don't know if he really reads. I think he's just kind of like, "Oh yeah, Jonna writes a sex column, whatever." I don't think it matters one way or the other to him, but my mom loves it and she thinks it's great, and it just cracks her up when some of her, like, she works at a bank, and so sometimes her customers will come in who have children who are like sons and daughters that also are students here, and they'll be like, "So I heard Jonna writes a sex column," and they'll be all like, "How do you feel about, did you know?" And she'll be like, "Oh yeah, I knew." And she just thinks it's really funny, and yeah, she definitely supports everything.
Do you think without that support, maybe if your mom was a little more negative towards the whole thing, do you think you'd still be able to write this, or do you think the support from maybe friends and family actually gives you the courage to write this?
The support definitely helps, and maybe that is why I'm so comfortable with it, is because my mom and I have always been open about things like this and open about talking and discussing things, and so that definitely helps. I can't imagine my mom being negative about it, so I don't really know how to answer that question, but it does definitely help that I have her support, and a lot of my friends are very supportive of it.
So your parent, I'm guessing you and your mom had a pretty open relationship before you started, writing this column. She kind of already knew.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't a big surprise for her to also be reading some of these things that.
No, I don't think so. I'm sure every once in a while she goes, "Oh, that's interesting." But for the most part, I think she was semi-aware of what I'm up to. Maybe not that aware.
Before you started writing this, you had your group of friends. When you actually started writing this, were some of the friends really supportive? Were some kind of like, maybe backing away a little bit because, they weren't sure? Or did you basically your friends were kind of like, well, that's just Jonna?
Yeah, it was kind of like that. My best friend and I have always been like, we've always been like the same person but completely different, if that makes any sense. And so when I started writing this column, she's completely opposite in some of my standpoints in my column. Just mostly, I don't know. Okay, I won't go into details. But she just kind of like shook her head like, "Oh, Jonna, I would never be able to do that, but I completely support the fact that you do, and it's totally cool." And I think a lot of my other friends were just kind of like, "Oh, haha, just that's Jonna." But I think a lot of the people that I went to high school with and that knew me before but weren't really friends with me, a lot of the people that I went to high school with came down here for school also. And so I'll every once in a while hear people go, "Oh, I went to high school with her. She wasn't like that at all." And just funny things like that because they didn't really know me.
Do any of the guys that you start getting involved with ever get nervous that they're going to end the topic of your next column?
Let's see. I haven't really gotten that involved. Well, actually, yeah, I did kind of date this guy last semester, and he was a little nervous that I was going to write about him, but the only column I wrote about him was very nice, and it had nothing to do with sex.
right before we're going to take a quick break here at 8:30, and then we'll come back for another quick segment with Jonna Jersman, Sex Girls columnist. Jonna, have you written anything else for the Daily Nebraskan before or during, the Sex Girls? And did you just find it easier, harder to write that after the Sex Girls, or?
While I was writing Sex Girls, I also wrote a top 40 music column where I would find one song or artist that was in the top 40 that week and either say if I liked them or didn't like them, or if I thought the music deserved to be where it was or not. And before that semester, I wrote for the feature section mostly reviews and previews of things and other feature stories. But I don't know if Sex Girls is necessarily easier to write, but it's definitely a lot more fun.
Definitely.
No worries.
Okay, thanks again very much, Jonna.
Thank you.
Take a quick break, and then we will come on back with some more exciting Waterdown Wednesday stuff. You're listening to Waterdown Wednesday here on Studio 201.